How are you, Kurt?
I'm good, buddy. How you doing, man?
I am doing great. Orlando Pace going in. How good was he, Kurt?
Oh, my gosh. Phenomenal. I mean, we talk about this era of offensive tackles, the Walter Jones, the Jonathan Ogden, and Orlando Pace. Those three guys go in the same category. They're in the same sentence. And the most amazing thing is I'm not sure Big O wasn't the most athletic of all three of them. I mean, this was a guy that was big and strong and tough, but his athleticism was incredible. I can still remember when I think about Orlando Pace, so many things to think about, but I remember one time where we had thrown an interception in the back of the end zone to Champ Bailey. We were on about the 10-yard line, and he picked it off in the back of the end zone and had a clear line down the sideline, to our left side where Orlando Pace was. And I saw Orlando getting a dead sprint, and he caught Champ Bailey by the 50-yard line and tackled him. And you're just going, man, this is a 6'7" guy, 300 and however many pounds, and he just chased down Champ Bailey. Just speaks to his athleticism and the ability to do so many different things. He could block a speed rusher from the outside. He was strong enough that if you had any kind of a bull rusher, he could dominate there as well. He could get down the field in the run game. I mean, he was so versatile and so good. And, the amazing thing is because of the greatest show on turf, we kind of forget about Orlando Pace a little bit because they talk about all the weapons. He made what we did possible because he shut down the backside and he allowed us to hold the ball and throw it down the field. He allowed us to put five guys out because we knew without a doubt he was going to shut down the opposing team's best player.
Kurt, you played 53 career games with the St. Louis Rams. Do you recall the number of exact games you played without Orlando Pace on the field protecting you?
I do not, but I'm sure there was not very many.
I've got it for you. I wouldn't ask the question if I didn't.
Missing a single game that I played in, but maybe there was one or two along the way.
There was one, just one game, Kurt, and you broke your finger in that game on your throwing hand.
Oh, way to go, Big O! Okay, it's all on Big O now. I didn't even put that together, but I'm going to have a conversation with him tomorrow when I see him.
But would you remember what your mindset? I guess if you don't recall the number of games you played without him, but I mean, what did he bring to your comfort level, knowing that when you turned a certain way, you didn't have to worry about what was coming behind you?
Yeah, and if you think back to that era and when we started playing together, that was the era where the defense's best pass rusher was always on the left side because so many quarterbacks and was always on the backside. That's changed a little bit with different players we have like Von Miller and when you get bookends, good pass rushers can go to that right side. But for the longest time, the best pass rusher was on the blind side of the quarterback, which was 99% of the time the left side. And we would go into a game plan meeting every week, and what our coaches would do is they would always highlight certain players, the best players on the other teams, and say, okay, we got to, this is the guy we have to take care of. This is the guy we have to worry about. And although the best player on the other team was, the defensive end, on our left side, in most situations, that guy was never highlighted the time that I was in St. Louis. There was never a concern about that guy, no matter how good he was. We knew we could just X that guy out. We never had to give him help. We never had to give him extra protection. We knew he was going to be on an island every time we threw it, and we threw it a lot. He was going to be on an island, but as a quarterback, it was never a concern. Those guys, those great pass rushers, never a concern for me. And when you're a quarterback that throws the ball a lot, has to hold it, you're going to send five guys out, you're always worrying about those guys up front and whether you can block them. In the case of Orlando Pace, that was just never a concern.
Kurt Warner joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And then I think it goes without saying the toughest game you had to play, and this is even the Super Bowl you lost to New England, with all due respect, Brockman, to your Patriots. The NFC Championship game against Dungy's Buccaneers, the one that you won, might be obviously the hardest fought victory you had with the Rams. What was it going up against the Dungy coordinated, or Dungy at least inspired defense that day with Sapp and everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, that day and every day. If there was one team throughout my career that I hated to play from the standpoint of how tough they were, it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And The thing about Coach Dungy, if you know him, the defense kind of fits him. The defense wasn't flashy. They didn't do a lot of things, but what they did, they were unbelievable at. They had great discipline. They were where they were supposed to be. They put perfect athletes in perfect positions in that defense, like guys like Derek Brooks, to use his skills. And you just knew every time you played against Tony Dungy and that defense, nothing was going to be easy. You had to be on your game. They were not going to make mistakes to beat themselves. And then you couple that with what we know was an incredibly talented defense, across the board on all three levels. But it was just that discipline and that attention to detail that they had, to me, is a reflection of who Coach Dungy is. And, when you sit down and talk to him, an amazing man, but he's not going to be all flashy and exuberant, and he's not going to be loud. And that defense was very similar to that. They just went about their business. They hit you hard, but they quietly, being that they didn't do a lot of things, they were just unbelievable to play against. And some of my greatest games and greatest matchups and greatest competitions were against Tony Dungy and that defense.
Kurt Warner joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And now let's really hit the Wayback Machine. Before Mooch cut you, you're there in Green Bay. There's Favre, and you knew that he's not going to not play. I mean, he's there. What was it like breaking into the NFL and seeing Favre at the height of the Favreness that's getting enshrined this weekend? What was that like, Kurt?
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing was I was kind of there right on, that bridge. When he was really young and started to play, everybody kind of remembers he was just kind of a wild guy. He'd be getting swung down and he'd whip the ball up into the, secondary, and he gets intercepted. And that was kind of the early stages where you weren't really sure. And then there was a bridge before he became, what he became, and one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. And I was kind of there during that bridge. And so, I went into camp there and would watch him on a daily basis. And when people would ask me about him, they kind of had that question mark, like, okay, how good is this guy? Is he ever going to get it? Because you could see the talent, but you weren't quite sure. It was so enjoyable to watch him on the practice field. I would go home and I'd call my family and I'm like, this guy is awesome. And, it's so funny because we sat in meeting rooms, and you mentioned that there was Mooch and there was Ty Detmer and Mark Brunell and myself and Brett Favre, and we would sit in meeting rooms, and one of the things Coach would do is we'd watch old film, and he'd ask guys, okay, what formation, movement, and then he'd show what play is this. And, there was a number of times he would ask Brett, and, Brett's like, I don't know, east, west, I don't know what that play is, and then Ty's in the background. And before, Brett's even done, Ty rips off the play and the formation and the movement. And you kind of sit there and shake your head like, does he really not know what the play is? I mean, can he not really? But then he gets out between those lines. He knew where everybody was going to be. He knew where the ball should go. And he had an uncanny ability to throw and make plays like few people I've ever seen. And so it was fun to be there at that stage and kind of walk away telling people, just wait, this guy is going to be really, really special. And, that's what we've seen. I mean, guys that grow up playing the quarterback position, you admire the way Brett Favre played the game, with no abandon. He made a mistake. He never let it bother him, but he just had an uncanny ability to make big plays in a lot of crazy different ways. But he had so much fun doing it. And I couldn't play the game the same way that Brett did, but I greatly admired the way that he played the game. And, and it was just fun to get to know him, over the years, and then to watch this moment, because few guys more deserving than Brett Favre to be Cantonized.
Yeah, different strokes for different folks, right, Kurt?
Yeah, exactly. We all do it a little differently, and we're all envious of the great ones and certain things they have about them. But he just enjoyed the game, and I think everybody saw that. And what they admired so much about him is that when we say we got to play a game for a living, he made it look like that every time he went out on Sunday afternoon, that he was a kid playing a game and was just so grateful to be out there and have that opportunity every time he showed up on Sunday.
Before I let you go, you're making your way through training camps for our network, and you just spent time in Oxnard with the Cowboys. I mean, what does Romo look like to you? Certainly, with right now that spot behind him completely blank unless you figure Dak Prescott could fill it. What do you think about all that, Kurt?
Well, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, they're only a few days into camp, and, Tony was already, off yesterday. He didn't practice yesterday. I think he's off again today. They're giving him a couple days off, and it was having to do somewhat with his back a little bit as he's getting older and just, dealing with some of the back issues he's had in the past and just kind of managing that. And then you've already got, the idea of the collarbone, which he broke last year. And he was telling us on the network when we interviewed him yesterday that the effect supposedly is supposed to be like a pogo stick, whatever they did in there with the surgery. So it's supposed to be able to retract and bounce back. So it was interesting when he was talking about it. But, he tried to play it off like, I don't think about it, I don't worry about it. But I think you could tell in camp yesterday, everybody is holding their breath. They believe everything with this team hinges on Tony Romo and his health. So they're being very cautious with him from the collarbone to the back. And I think there's a lot of concern there, not just, because they don't have a backup, didn't have one last year, but just because Tony is so special and so unique. And I don't think anybody believes there that they can have nearly the success they had 2 years ago without Tony Romo behind center. And so everybody was really holding their breath, knowing he wasn't practicing already and just concerned that he might not make it 16 games.
What do they do then, Kurt?
I know.
I mean, where do they go right now? Because they can't put a raw rookie behind him going to 2016.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, after last year and watching how they had no backup plan, I think the first thing you said when they got to the offseason, you said, okay, they're not going to let that happen 2 years in a row. And, I mean, here we are, the first week of training camp. The only backup with any experience goes down with a broken ankle. The other two guys haven't played a single snap. Tony's already sitting out, just managing his injuries. And you're sitting here going, can the Cowboys possibly be in the exact same situation they were in last year when they went 1-11 down the stretch? I think that's the thing that amazes me more than anything. Not that, guys are getting banged up and they're worried about Tony, but just that here we are for a second year in a row, and they have absolutely no plan at the backup quarterback position.
Travel safe, Kurt. See you tomorrow.
All right, buddy. That's good. Sounds good.
Thanks, pal. Thanks for doing this. That's Kurt Warner.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.